Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. Is the FBI part of the resistance? That is the subject of tonight's Waters Words. This week we found out that the top FBI agent investigating the Trump campaign, Peter Strzok, despised Donald Trump and was plotting extreme action against him. Here are some text messages between FBI agents. Trump's an idiot. F Trump. Hillary has to win. Trump's election would be terrifying. It's like the FBI had Michael Moore investigating the President of the United States. But it gets worse. The lead agent on Robert Mueller's team investigating Donald Trump agreed that it was his job to protect the country from that menace, Trump. The Trump-hating FBI agent also says there's no way Trump gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. And by the way, this conversation occurred in the office of Andrew McCabe, the FBI's deputy director. This is smoking gun evidence that the FBI agents investigating Donald Trump believed it was their duty to protect the country from his presidency, and they had a plan in place to achieve their goal. Mueller fired this agent late last summer, but the damage was already done. This FBI agent also led the Hillary investigation, had softball Hillary's interview, and helped Comey exonerate her. And we're going to have more on that later in the show. He'd also already led the Trump investigation for a full year and interviewed Mike Flynn without a lawyer present. So the investigation into Donald Trump's campaign has been crooked from the jump. But the scary part is we may now have proof the investigation was weaponized to destroy his presidency for partisan political purposes and to disenfranchise millions of American voters. Now, if that's true, we have a coup on our hands in America. And Congress must force the FBI and the individuals involved to come clean on what counter-espionage agents meant by insurance policy to protect the country from Donald Trump's presidency. Now, the president spoke about the new revelations on Friday.
It is very sad when you look at those documents, and how they've done that is really, really disgraceful. And you have a lot of very angry people that are seeing it. I can say this. When you look at what's gone on with the FBI and with the Justice Department, people are very, very angry.
Joining us now, Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, what do you think they mean when they say they need to protect America from Trump and they need to have an insurance policy against his presidency?
There's very little translation needed there. The fix was in against Donald Trump from the beginning, and they were pro-Hillary. We understand people have political views, but they are expressing theirs with such animus and venom towards the now president of the United States, they can't possibly be seen as objective or transparent or even-handed or fair. And this president, as he made the comments you just showed on the South Lawn, he was on his way to the FBI graduation in Quantico, Virginia. He respects and applauds and supports the rank and file of the FBI. But these investigations must be transparent and accountable and done by people who are impartial and fair.
Well, how dangerous do you think it is if you have these people plotting what it appears to be some sort of subversion campaign against the president or the president-elect? How dangerous is that?
Jesse, it's toxic, it's lethal, and it may be fatal to the continuation of people arguing that that matter is since behind us, he won, he's the president, and that the Mueller investigation is something separate. But look, Americans need to see the entire process for what it is. And I've noticed people who are trying to cover these latest bombshell revelations about the bias against Donald Trump as a candidate. They're trying to cover it by somehow saying the president is against the FBI, he's trying to shut down the investigation. No, we need to see. His lawyers made clear everybody is complying with that investigation, including the president, who's not under investigation, we're told. Look, everybody should see both sides of the coin here. And the idea that the Federal Bureau of Investigations, that also has a tagline where the I stands for integrity, had people at the highest levels, steps away from the Deputy Attorney General also until recently, that were overtly biased against Donald Trump. And by the way, Jesse, let's be clear, none of us would know any of this had they all had their way and Hillary Clinton had become the president.
And
we
you're
wouldn't
right.
know any of this.
And not only that, we wouldn't know a lot of this because these texts were handed over under the threat of a subpoena and under the threat of censure. They were
right.
keeping these texts secret since this summer.
That's
now,
right.
I just want to ask. Go ahead. Last question,
There's
real quick on this.
There's another thing going on here. I just saw recently that they were desperately trying to discern who leaked the information about the tarmac meeting between Lynch and Clinton.
Yep,
Also,
that
President
came out
Clinton.
as well.
So that's coming out as well. That is something that has disturbed Americans. Many people look back at that revelation and say that is exactly what they hate about the insular nature of Washington, D.C. and the so-called swamp that needs to be drained. They hate these special favors.
Yeah, they
didn't like that.
They were
So
more
there's so much
concerned
more-
about the tarmac meeting, whether
Clearly
not
there's more
about
to
whether it
learn
was
here.
corrupt or not, but
That's
whether or
right.
not they needed to cover it up. Now, let
That's
me
right.
move on to the tax cut situation. Is this thing going to pass? I know it's like down to the wire right now. And why, if you're a middle-class family with a few kids, how specifically does it help them? I'll give you the last couple seconds.
We are so hopeful, Jesse, that it's going to pass and the president will sign it into law in time for Christmas as he promised. This will help middle America in many ways. Number one, the standard deduction is doubled for everyone. So a married couple watching right now will go from $14,000 to $28,000 of their first income at 0%. The first $28,000, 0%. That's huge.
That's good.
Also, they'll get a reduction in the tax bracket itself, in the rate that they pay on their taxable income. Also, if that couple has children, they will get the child care tax credit expanded, adult dependent tax credit for the first time ever. If they have a mortgage interest, the deduction remains. If they give money to charity, that remains. And so a number of the features that middle class Americans have told us they rely upon remain. The other thing is that by reducing the corporate rate from the high of 35% in the developed world to 21% under the average of 23%, that makes us a more competitive nation. We've become uncompetitive and we have penalized American companies from keeping their profits and their jobs here. We're going to bring that back.
So some
That
of the
helps everyone.
criticism, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, is this favors corporations more than it favors individuals and families. What would you say to that?
It's both of the above. That's coming from folks who didn't bother to read the details, who predicted a year ago when Donald Trump was first elected there'd be the stock market crash. It's got dozens and dozens of record highs. It was at 18,000 when he got elected. It's over 24,000 now. They predicted a global recession. We have the highest consumer confidence rate. We have the lowest unemployment rate among Hispanics ever in our nation's history under this president's watch and leadership. So I would say to those Democrats who couldn't even find it to vote for a massive tax cut for middle Americans, for our job creators, to make us more competitive, they're missing. The train left the station and they didn't hop on it. They're going to have to go home and explain to their job creators, their job holders, and their job seekers why they couldn't see through petty partisan politics and vote for that tax cut. We hope we'll have their votes on other major measures that are happening in 2018.
Well, I hope you guys have the votes on this because I know the Vice President Pence, I think, delayed his trip to the Middle East just so he could cast that decider. It could come down to the VP's vote, and I think everyone's going to be watching because I want more money in my pocket because I have a lot of Christmas presents to buy some people.
There you go. And by the way, people just deserve to do that. We had 5 families here with the president at the White House on Wednesday of this week, and each of them took to the podium unscripted, and they went and they told America how they plan to spend the extra money they have in their pockets. A couple of them talked about home renovations, long planned.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can spend money on. There's a lot of great
Education
books
improvements.
out there
But you're right. We have
that you can buy some Waters World paraphernalia
Waters
if you
World,
go
that's
online.
right.
All right,
See?
Kelly, and Merry Christmas. I got to run.
Merry Christmas to you, Jesse. All the best.
Thank you. More evidence that the FBI investigation into Hillary was just as crooked as she was. As we've been reporting, FBI Director James Comey drafted an exoneration letter for Hillary before the Bureau even interviewed her. And guess who did the interview? Peter Strzok, the Trump-hating FBI agent who was praising Hillary while he was conducting the so-called investigation. And we got our hands on the letter that Comey wrote, exonerating Hillary, and discovered Peter Strzok himself edited out language that would have made Hillary guilty of a crime. He twice changed how Hillary's actions were characterized, from, quote, gross negligence to, quote, extremely careless. In addition, Comey originally wrote it was reasonably likely that Hillary's server was hacked by America's enemies, but Strzok softened it to it was possible she was hacked, creating doubt about whether Hillary Clinton put national security at risk. Coincidentally, this was President Obama's line as well.
I continue to believe that she has not jeopardized America's national security.
That was a lie. Everybody in the intelligence community believed she was hacked and secrets were stolen. But Hillary was given special treatment by partisan agents, then paid for fake dirt from Russia to smear Trump with. And he's the one being investigated for collusion?
They're spending millions and millions of dollars. There is absolutely no collusion. I didn't make a phone call to Russia. I have nothing to do with Russia. Everybody knows it. That was a Democrat hoax. It was an excuse for losing the election, but they found tremendous things on the other side. When you look at the Hillary Clinton investigation, it was, I've been saying it for a long time. That was a rigged system, folks. That was a rigged system.
Here with reaction, former deputy assistant to the president and Fox News contributor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. So, Dr. Gorka, now it's crystal clear that this whole thing was cooked from the jump. And that really struck me was that everybody has been saying for a long time that, we're not really sure if Hillary's emails were hacked by her enemies. Now it looks like Comey himself believed they were probably hacked.
Absolutely. What we have here, Jesse, is we have corrupt cops. It's very clear. This man, Peter Strzok, the former director, James Comey, the current deputy, Andy McCabe, all of these people thought that their favorite candidate, Hillary Clinton, was going to become president. That's why it wasn't just kid gloves that Strzok used in the Servergate investigation. Think of what he did. The FBI, during that investigation, destroyed the evidence, the laptops. They destroyed it, not Hillary.
And
the FBI did.
And you know who Mueller, the special counsel, hired as part of his investigative team against Trump? The lawyer who represented Hillary's IT guy that destroyed her devices with a hammer. So it all comes full circle. You say that they were motivated to downplay the severity of the charges against Hillary because you thought maybe they expected her to win, so maybe they would still have jobs? Is that what maybe you're saying?
Well, look, they knew that they were feathering their own nest for the future. When the New York Times told everyone that Hillary has a 92% chance of defeating Donald Trump, then these bent, corrupt, politically motivated individuals who wear the FBI badge, Jesse, they said, we've got to make sure Hillary skates through. We've got to cook the books. We've got to allow one of the suspects in the Servergate to actually represent Hillary at those interviews. We're not going to tape the interviews. And then we get that moment when Peter Strzok cooks the books for Comey and drafts that memo that says, before we have the final decision, we're going to exonerate her. That's what happens in a banana republic. And you know what's really scary, Jesse?
What?
Where is Peter now? Where is Peter Strzok?
He's in some HR job over at the FBI.
Right. He hasn't been suspended. They haven't taken his badge. They haven't taken his gun. He is in the HR department where he can hide all kinds of stuff. He can downplay. He can massage documents about other people's political backgrounds.
You're exactly right. He has access to critical documents within the Bureau. Is this the guy we're supposed to trust to have access to these documents? I'm not so sure. I saw something the other day, Dr. Gorka, and I couldn't believe it. It's from the National Review, and here's the headline. What if America won a war and no one cared? They're talking about the allies who've defeated the ISIS caliphate in Iraq and a lot of Syria. This has happened. Donald Trump has bombed the hell out of ISIS. They're running scared and scattered, and it's not being reported. Imagine if Obama and his military with his allies had destroyed ISIS. They would have been having parades and specials all over the television.
Jesse, two years ago, go back 2 years, okay? We had been told by Obama that this is a generational conflict. Our children, our grandchildren will be fighting these jihadis. Back then, ISIS, which had been a little sister organization of Al-Qaeda, had established a caliphate in multiple countries. It had affiliates in 18 countries. According to the Financial Times, it was making $2 million a day from kidnapping, oil sales, you name it. And then I guess the Trump administration has managed to crush a generation down into a month.
Well, listen, the war on terror is not over, but the entire battlefield has been eliminated in terms of the caliphate in Iraq and Syria. And I don't think that Donald Trump's gotten any credit because he was the one that loosened the rules of engagement. He was the one that put the heavy pressure on the enemy. And exactly what he said was going to happen happened. And the stock market's through the roof. ISIS caliphate's destroyed. I mean, that's not a bad first year if you don't count anything else. I'll give you the last word.
He's crushing it. Look at one thing. This is the first jihadi organization since 1924, since when the last caliphate was dissolved, that has succeeded to create a new one. When Steve Bannon and I were in the office in the West Wing, we had one objective above all else, to make sure the physical caliphate is destroyed. Jesse, it's already gone.
All right. Well, that's good news. And Merry Christmas. Maybe that was the present
Christmas
we were going to deliver to the jihadis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jesse.
The truth about Omarosa. Sean Spicer's here next. Omarosa says she plans on writing a tell-all about how she was treated as a black woman in the White House. Joining me now, someone all too familiar with these tactics, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. So, Sean, I hate to ask you about Omarosa, but I mean, it's blowing up all over the place. What was the truth about that whole situation, and what was your experience with her?
Well, I'm not really privy to what actually went down. I know that she's decided to move on, and General Kelly and her came to some kind of agreement, and it sounds like that's in the best interest of everybody involved. Omarosa worked for the Office of Public Liaison, which didn't fall under my purview, so I wasn't really privy to what she did in and out every day. My understanding was that office is tasked with doing outreach to the various communities and coalitions that help move the president's agenda along and help inform the White House about issues that are important to the American people.
Yeah, I took it as kind of a threat when she said, well, I've heard things and I've seen things and I've witnessed things as a black woman in the Trump White House that made me very uncomfortable, and soon I'm going to write a book about it. Isn't that how you perceived it?
It definitely came across that way, and I hope that if she did feel uncomfortable or is anything that she found inappropriate, that she reported it to the Office of Administration or to Human Resources or whomever at the time that was the appropriate venue. It's not appropriate at the end on your way out the door to kind of kick everyone and say, I'm going to use the privilege and trust that was given to me to do a tell-all. I think that's really betraying the trust that the president in particular has placed in his senior staff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I'm not sure how the media is going to handle this tell-all, because when the president brought her into the White House, a black woman, they mocked it for her being some sort of a joke. And then when the black woman was fired from the Trump White House, then all of a sudden the White House lacks diversity. So whatever the president does, he's always going to get hammered on. And this goes to the next point I want to bring up. A new study that says the last 3 months, 90% of the mainstream media's coverage on the nightly news of Donald Trump has been negative. I think that's even too low. I think it's going to be even worse.
I want to see the 10%.
I know. Where was that? I mean, come on. 90%, and it was 90% the first 100 days, 90% in the summer. At least they're consistently biased, Sean.
Right. I mean, I don't think it should come as any shock. Any of us who've been in conservative politics for a while understand that this is a pattern, but I think they've taken it to a new height with this president. There is a desire not to make sure that credit is given when credit is due. You look at the regulatory impact that this president has had on business growth, on economic growth, and on jobs. Very little of any coverage to give him the credit that he's due on this, and the climate that he's instilled within the business community. And in so many other fronts, it's always why he's not going to succeed succeed, what went wrong, as opposed to highlighting to any degree the successes that the president's had, the team that he has around him, the initiatives that he's undertaken. But there's a lot of good that's happening in this administration, and I think, frankly, people. This is why there's a lack of trust in the media. This is why I've talked about writing a book about my experiences, because I think so often that there's a narrative that gets portrayed about what's happening that doesn't match the reality of what's happening.
Well, because we just talked about it with Gorka before you. He's defeated ISIS in the Middle East, no more caliphate, and the stock market's at a record high. Yet he doesn't get any credit for those major victories, and then they seize on these tiny little things. So you're writing this book about your experience, and that's going to be out in the summer. Can you point me to some examples about when you were at the White House as a press secretary and you're interacting with these people, not all the time on camera, but off camera? What was the sense of you that you got of them personally about how they felt personally about the President of the United States?
Well, there's no question, Jesse, that a number of these individuals personally don't like him, don't like his style, don't like that he defeated Hillary Clinton.
Is
frankly,
it a style thing, or is it all politics, do you think? Because he does have a unique style.
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think, generally speaking, there's an immediate liberal bias that they have. But I think with this president in particular, he doesn't view them with the same level of entitlement that they feel that they deserve, that they may have necessarily received. And I think that's one of the big differences that we see in the press corps more and more, is this level of entitlement, this level of not having to ever apologize for being wrong or calling out each other.
Because he doesn't fawn over them the way typical politicians do, and doesn't cater to them, and doesn't expect everything they do to be perfect. He challenges them when he feels they need to be challenged, and that's probably what creates so much tension, because they've been getting a free ride for so many years. Now, Sean, I know you have a lot of writing to do, so I'm going to have to let you go, but Merry Christmas, okay?
Merry Christmas, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. And later, the Bros going to be in Waters World.
What up, Council? My name is Chad Kroger.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Molly Line. The Thomas Fire in Southern California turned Santa Barbara into a virtual ghost town Saturday. The fire is being fueled by gusty winds and forcing more evacuations. The fire also heading for the wealthy enclave of Montecito, home to celebrities like Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, and many others. 8,300 firefighters from a dozen states are battling the blaze, which began December 4th. It has now consumed 404 square miles. Its cause still under investigation. In Israel, Palestinian protests are picking up. Israeli security forces using stun grenades today on protesters in Jerusalem. Friday, 4 Palestinians were killed and dozens injured in clashes with Israeli on the West Bank near the border with Gaza. I'm Molly Line. Now back to Waters World.
Meat creates toxic masculinity, according to a university professor. Eating meat is bad for you, it's bad for the country, and it reinforces gender stereotypes, apparently. Yeah. But it tastes so good. Joining me now, Dr. D'Alessio Parson. Okay, doctor. Why is eating meat bad, really?
Well, we have to back up, because you, I think at the beginning, just said eating meat creates toxic masculinity. Mm-hmm. The toxic masculinity is already there.
It's already there. Does eating meat make toxic masculinity worse?
It's one of the ways in which it can reinforce existing kind of social structures, including patriarchy.
Well, how does that reinforce social structures where men dominate eating meat?
Yeah, it's really complicated. And
we'll break it down for
how about this, though? You said we had 4 or 5 minutes, right?
Just keep it simple. How does eating meat make the genders unequal?
Eating meat holds a lot of symbolism, and it really is too much to explain in 4 minutes. But it has to do with the fact that our individual level decisions, the things we decide to do as individuals, what we consume, what we put on our bodies, the things we buy and put in our households, are fundamentally political acts.
Okay.
Right? The personal is political.
Okay. So I'm having a steak right now because I'm starving.
I hear you. I wish I could have half of that, but this doesn't look vegan, and I'm trying to be vegan.
You're a vegan?
It's really hard because I don't know if I told you I'm from Wisconsin.
Okay.
And cheese was like one of my favorite things.
See how that looks pretty good. That's a little rare, medium rare.
Yeah.
Is
Got
this
some nice dead animal, dead cow hanging on your fork?
Is this bad that I'm eating meat?
If you go hunting, that's a totally different story, right? The blood's on your hands. Right now, you're kind of just enjoying the benefit and the blood's on someone else's hands. And that's not very fair.
What if they want to hunt meat, or what if they want to raise cattle?
Oh, totally. But the idea of killing and taking a life, that we should really deeply consider what that means for us as human beings. You know, people have said you should judge a society by how it treats their animals. And we, you know, it'd be great if we had universal health care for our animals.
Universal health care for animals, that could be expensive.
We can afford it. Look.
Really? Because we're $20 trillion in debt.
I got some money. I got this
Do you
nice
care
mug.
more about people or animals?
I care about our world, and I think in order for us to achieve a more sustainable future, particularly regarding what's happening with climate change, we need to figure out how the 7.6 billion of us on this planet can be good neighbors. And we're really bad at being good neighbors right now.
Okay, so like, why should I be a good neighbor to a squirrel?
Well, you don't have to worry about, if you don't want to worry too much about the squirrel right now, the squirrel's part of nature, right? If you keep killing nature, what's going to happen to us, right? If we as people keep killing nature. Me too, right? Like, I still eat cheese a lot. It's not like something that's going to be perfect. We're never going to be perfect at it.
But what if you're just hungry and the animals are there for us to enjoy for dinner, for lunch,
'Cause God said so.
breakfast?
Did God tell you that?
Well, I mean, why would they taste so good if we weren't supposed to eat them?
Sugar tastes good.
No, I eat sugar too.
Obesity, diabetes.
Well, I mean, I have some sugar, but
I mean, you clearly have a lot.
I don't just pour sugar down my throat.
You clearly have some things around like who you are that protect you, and like especially a lot of, I think, financial resources to like do things like buy really expensive steaks.
Okay.
So that's also part of the problem, is that some people are really taking up more than their fair share of, you know,
So
plate.
The rich people are stealing all the steak from the poor people.
Surplus value.
Okay, well, you know what?
I got a book for you.
I'm going to go take this
Wait,
steak
can I
and
get
I'm
the
going to
book?
go give it to a homeless guy out on 6th Avenue.
Go for it. And you were saying you needed books
Doctor,
for Christmas.
Thank you very much. I will take your book and I will take a bite of this steak.
And this is the book I'm reading.
And it's delicious. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. You might not be able to drink liquor on a plane anymore.
That'd be too bad. I like drinking liquor on planes.